Now let me just take you now back to the process question.
Yes.
You know, all this you are saying are anchored in some process, that provided in a systemic way.
Yes, sure.
Now, the government, we have legal frameworks that guides planning and budgeting. Yeah. The Constitution has provisions for that. Public Finance Management Act has provisions for that. The County Government Act has provisions for that. So we have several legal frameworks. Now, what is important for us today is to appreciate the annual guideline that is issued by the National Treasury. Despite the constitutional provisions and all the legal frameworks, so all this I'm saying, the legal framework is there, but we have now the annual budget guideline. The National Treasury every year issues that guideline for the budget process, right?
Okay.
Now that guideline is issued before the end of August every year. Now, for example, this year the guideline is available. With that guideline, National Treasury gives guidance on the government priorities for budgeting. It gives guidelines on what the ministries and departments of government are supposed to do. They are categorized under sectors. It gives guidelines on how every sector is supposed to plan for the next year. Among that guideline is a requirement that the sectors are supposed to do performance review. So they're supposed to evaluate their previous year's performance, not just on what they achieved, but how they utilized the money. Now, that is the first phase. Sometimes people want to call it budget making. Others want to call it budget formulation.
Yeah.
It takes about 4 months. So look at September, October, November, December. It's a process on its own. It's heavily planning intensive. Now, where is the space for the child at that phase? Treasury has given the guidelines. So the first problem we have, in the Treasury guidelines, it indicates that the sectors are supposed to consider the views from the public and stakeholders.
Yes. Yes.
Now, once the sectors have been told that, we forget that the children include the public. So the consultations will happen, but where children are not present, their parents and guardians also do not participate. And why are they not participating? It's because those sector processes are not organized in a manner that you and me can easily participate. So the first phase of budget making or budget formulation has an opportunity for children, family, and parents to provide their views. For example, for a long time, the national government does sector hearings in Nairobi.
Yeah.
So everyone goes to national, it's Kenya International Conference, KICC. So how will your colleague who is in Lamu or Mandera or Wajir make his way to KICC? It's not possible. Now, when you give documents on soft copy and say they're available in the internet, you can go and download them. What makes government think that everyone has access to internet? No, that is where we have a problem at the guideline level. Okay. Now, once all this has been done at the budget making level, as the national government is doing their budget making, the county government are also doing their budget making, the first phase. So the county governments equally have their county-specific guideline that are aligned to the national government guideline, right? So there are spaces and opportunities for shaping the budget at making. Now, once we leave the budget making, now we go to budget approval. Yeah. Budget making is largely the role of the executive at national level and county level. Budget approval is the role of the legislature at national and county level. So when the executive has prepared the budget proposal, the National Assembly has a responsibility to review and engage the public further before approval. The county assembly has that responsibility. Sometimes we want to call it budget enactment. So after approval, we go to the third phase, which is now implementation. So the National Assembly approves, then the executive now begins to implement the budget. The county executive also implements the budget. Now, as this budget implementation is going on, the National Assembly again has oversight, budget monitoring. So, you give approval, go and implement. But as you implement, I am monitoring you through oversight. That's why I said an MCA who is not effective in their oversight role will not be able to monitor budget implementation. But all this, there are structures for doing them. For example, apart from the National Treasury that is largely responsible for budget making and guidance, we have the Office of the Controller of Budget that on a quarterly basis publishes the budget implementation report. And they publish budget implementation reports for all county governments and for national government departments. Now, you and me must then engage with the Controller of Budget reports for you to see how the money is being spent. Yeah. But the fourth critical stage is budget audit. That's why we have the Office of the Auditor General. Yeah. That after all said and done, you have made the budget, it has been approved, you're implementing it, the year has ended, the Office of the Auditor General again must ensure the audit. Once they audit, they take their findings again to Parliament, because that's the oversight role. So what we are saying here is not as straightforward as many of us may want to think. Yeah. There's a bit of reading that you really must do. And I normally say that if you are a Christian, the same passion you use to read your Bible is the same passion you must have in understanding your government processes and the budget.
Wow.